The last time my mother praised me, I was 16, and it was only because I didn't embarrass her in front of her friends. That memory came back to me on a quiet Tuesday morning in Boston, right as my phone buzzed with her name. I didn't answer right away. I never did anymore. This story is an original creation by the writing team of the Revenge Sins channel, inspired by the hidden corners of family life and told with the purpose of fostering emotional connection and spreading understanding. When I finally picked up, she didn't ask how I was. She never did. "Ava," she said, clipped and controlled. "Your father and I need help with some paperwork this weekend. You should come home." Home meant the North Shore suburbs outside Chicago. It meant tight smiles and measured disappointment. "I'll see what I can do," I said. She paused, then added, "Natalie will be there too. She's taking time off from the firm." Of course she was. My sister never missed an opportunity to be seen. At dinner that night, I told my co-founder I would be gone for a few days. He raised an eyebrow. "Family again?" "Always," I said, and he didn't push. If you're listening to this because you've lived through something similar, you already know how much silence can say without explaining a thing. I arrived on Friday evening. My parents' house looked the same, polished and careful, like nothing inside it was ever allowed to crack. My father was pacing when I walked in. My mother stood with her arms folded. Natalie sat on the couch, phone in hand, smiling like she already knew the ending. "You're still doing that software thing," my father said instead of hello. "It's not a thing," I said. "It's a company." Natalie laughed softly. "That's generous." My mother stepped in. "We're worried about you. Ava. You keep drifting. No stability, no plan." "I have a plan," I said. My father stopped pacing. "A plan doesn't count if no one respects it." The words landed harder than I expected. Natalie didn't look at me. She didn't need to. "At least at my firm," she said. "Effort turns into something real." I felt something tighten in my chest, but I kept my voice even. "You don't actually know what my work turns into. That's the problem," my mother said. "If it were real, we'd know." They spoke like this was kindness, like they were saving me. I stayed quiet, because I had learned long ago that defending myself only made them more certain I was failing. If you're still listening, stay with me. What they said next would change everything, and I didn't know it yet, but they did. My mother called it a conversation. My father called it a wake-up call. Natalie didn't call it anything at all. She just sat there, legs crossed, watching me like this was a meeting she'd already prepared for. "We didn't bring you here to argue," my mother said. "We brought you here because we care." My father stopped pacing and faced me. "You're 34 years old. Ava. You're still chasing ideas instead of building a life." "I have a life," I said. Natalie looked up from her phone. "You have projects. There's a difference." I felt the familiar pressure behind my eyes, the one that came whenever they spoke about me like I wasn't fully in the room. "You don't know what I've built." "That's exactly the issue," my mother said. "If it mattered, we'd see it. We'd hear about it from people we respect." My father folded his arms. "Your sister works in a firm where results are measurable. Promotions, titles, offices." "What do you have?" I answered honestly. "A company that pays its people well. Clients who renew because the product works." Natalie smiled, thin and polite. "That's cute." Something in me shifted then. Not anger, recognition. They weren't confused. They were certain. "We've been talking," my father continued, "about how long we've enabled this." "Enabled what I said. I've never asked you for money." My mother's voice sharpened. "Emotional support is still support. Letting you believe this could work was a mistake." Natalie leaned forward. "You always get defensive when reality comes up." "I'm not defensive," I said. "I'm tired." My father pointed toward the hallway, the same hallway I grew up walking down when I was praised for staying quiet. "If you want to keep pretending, you can't do it here." My mother nodded. "We can't be part of this anymore." I waited for one of them to soften it. None of them did. You should leave, my father said. Tonight. Natalie exhaled a small laugh. Honestly, maybe sleeping in your car would wake you up. The room went still. I felt the words settle somewhere deep, not sharp, just final. I picked up my coat. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. This is for your own good, she said. I looked at her. Then you won't need to check on me. She flinched, just slightly. As I reached the door, my father added, Don't come back until you have something real to show for all this. I turned. You never asked to see anything. Natalie didn't look at me. She didn't have to. Outside. The night felt quieter than the house ever had. I sat in my car for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, breathing until the tightness eased. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I felt clear. If you're still listening, remember this moment. This was where they thought the story ended. I drove away, knowing they believed I would come back smaller, apologetic, grateful for the lesson. They had no idea they had just removed the last reason I ever tried to belong. The silence afterward was louder than the argument itself. No call the next morning. No message asking if I'd made it back safely. By the time I returned to Boston, it was clear they hadn't meant leave for the night. They had meant disappear. At work. I kept my schedule intact. Meetings, product reviews, client calls. No one asked about my weekend, and I didn't offer. I'd learned that pain explained too early loses its shape. 3 days later, my phone buzzed during lunch. It was Mark Olson, my cousin on my mother's side, the only one who had ever spoken to me like I wasn't an inconvenience. You alive? He asked. Still here, I said. He hesitated. They're saying things. I didn't respond. Mark filled the space. Your mom told Aunt Diane you're between places. She said you needed time to figure things out. That's generous. She also said you didn't take it well. He added carefully, that you're unstable. I closed my eyes, and Natalie Mark exhaled. She joked that you'd be back once reality hit, said you always do. I let that settle, not because it hurt, but because it clarified everything. They hadn't just pushed me out. They were replacing me with a version that made them look right. That evening, I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. I heard you've been talking about me. I said. She sighed, already weary. We're just worried. Ava, people ask questions, and your answers. You're sensitive right now, she said. It's better they think you're taking space. Space from what she didn't answer. She didn't have to. You told them I'm unstable, I said. I said you're overwhelmed. She corrected. There's a difference. Not when it's repeated. I said. Not when it becomes a story. She lowered her voice. We're protecting you. I laughed once, short and quiet. You're protecting yourselves. She hung up. That night, Mark texted again. For what it's worth, I don't believe them. I stared at the message longer than I should have. If you're listening and you've ever been rewritten by people who claim to love you, you know how rare it is to be believed without explanation. I typed back, I know. What they didn't realize was that erasing me took effort. Keeping me erased would cost them far more. The email arrived on a Thursday morning, buried between routine notifications and calendar reminders. Unusual activity detected. I almost deleted it without opening it. I had not touched that account in years. When I logged in, my screen froze on 2 identical lines, 2 withdrawals, each for $9,300. Total $18,600. The account number was familiar in a way that made my stomach tighten. It was the custodial savings account my parents had opened when I was a teenager. When I turned 18, ownership transferred to me automatically. But my mother's signature authority had never been formally removed. I remembered thinking, years ago, that I would take care of it later. Later had arrived. I called the bank. The representative was calm, professional, the kind of voice trained to keep emotion out of transactions. Yes, she said after a pause. Both withdrawals were made in person. In person, I repeated. At our North Shore branch. Your mother presented identification and stated the funds were needed for a family emergency. My grip tightened around the phone. Was there any verification? There was a signature on file, she said carefully. I'm sorry. I thanked her and ended the call before my voice could change. I sat there for a long moment, not moving. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not clumsiness or panic. This was a decision. I called Mark. She took it. I said when he answered. There was silence on the other end. Took what from the old account? $18,600. He swore under his breath. I think I know where it went. I didn't interrupt. Natalie just leased a new luxury crossover. He said. She told people it was a family gift. Something about being appreciated for all her hard work. I closed my eyes. That night, I drove past my parents' house. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. Through the front window, I saw Natalie holding up a set of keys. My mother stood close, angling her phone for a photo. My father smiled, wide and proud, like this was a milestone they'd all earned together. With my money. My phone vibrated before I pulled away. It was my mother. Hope you're not upset. The account was just sitting there, and your sister needed help. You'll earn more someday. Family comes first. I read it twice. There was no apology, no explanation, just entitlement dressed as morality. I typed back, then deleted the message. I didn't trust myself to write anything that wouldn't end things forever. Not because I wanted to save the relationship, but because I wanted to choose how it ended. Instead, I forwarded the bank records to my personal email and closed the account that same night. If you're listening and you think this story is about money, it isn't. The money was small compared to what they thought they were allowed to take. What they really withdrew that day was the last benefit of the doubt I had left. I didn't confront them. Not that week. Not the next. I did something quieter instead. I locked everything down. My lawyer, Elena, listened without interrupting as I explained the account, the withdrawals, the text message. When I finished, she nodded once. You did the right thing closing it. We'll make sure there are no other open doors. Can they do it again? I asked. Not now, she said. But they tried because they thought you wouldn't push back. That stayed with me. I stopped answering messages that weren't essential. I skipped a networking dinner I had committed to months earlier. I told my team I needed a few days of uninterrupted work. The truth was, I needed silence. Planning anything this personal required it. A week later, that silence almost cost me everything. During a call with a potential logistics partner, I lost focus for just a moment. It was enough. My answers came half a beat late. My tone flattened. You seem distracted, the partner said. Are you fully committed to this expansion? I straightened. I am. There was a pause. We've had issues with founders who weren't stable under pressure. The word hit harder than it should have. Stable. I closed the call 10 minutes later, polite and professional, but the deal never recovered. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table, laptop closed, phone face down. I poured a drink and didn't touch it. The thought crept in slowly, unwelcome but honest. If I went through with this, if I dismantled them piece by piece, would I become what they already believed I was? I called Mark. I'm not sure I can do this. I said, do what keep going without it changing me. He was quiet for a moment. You're not planning to hurt them, he said. You're planning to stop them from hurting you. The distinction mattered more than I expected. Before we hung up, he added, if you're still listening to your instincts, you're not lost. After the call, I opened my laptop again. I didn't look at numbers or contracts. I looked at a draft email my team had prepared for clients. explaining our next phase of growth. At the bottom was a line inviting feedback, conversation, connection. If you're still listening, stay with me. What came next wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about deciding who I was allowed to be when no one was watching. I found out from someone who didn't mean to tell me. Peter Lang, an early advisor I respected, asked for a call. His voice was careful, like he was choosing each word to avoid stepping on glass. "I thought you should know," he said. "Your mother reached out." I said nothing. She framed it as concern. He continued. "Said you've been under a lot of emotional strain, that the pressure of running things alone might be affecting your judgment." "Did she use the word unstable?" I asked. He hesitated. "Not directly. She didn't need to." When the call ended, I sat very still. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't family venting. This was interference. I called my mother. "You spoke to Peter Lang," I said. She didn't deny it. "He's influential. I thought he should understand what you've been dealing with." "What I've been dealing with," I repeated. "Yes," she said gently. "You've always taken things hard. You told him I wasn't reliable. I told him you were overwhelmed," she corrected. "Any mother would. Any mother who wanted control." I said. Her voice tightened. "You're twisting this. You cost me a deal." I said. "That was not your decision to make." She exhaled sharply. "You're being dramatic." Something settled in me then, heavy and final. "I didn't say anything when you rewrote my life." I said. "I didn't say anything when you took my money." "This ends now." She scoffed. "You think you're cutting us off. You need us more than you realize. I needed parents." I said. "What I had was oversight." She hung up. I called Elena immediately. "They contacted an investor," I said. "They questioned my stability." "That's different," she replied. "That's actionable." "I don't want to sue," I said. "Good," she said. "You don't need to. You need boundaries that can't be crossed again." By the end of the day, every partner, advisor, and board contact had a single point of communication that wasn't me. No family access, no indirect reach, no leverage. That night, Mark texted. "They're angry, confused, asking why you won't answer." I typed back, "Because they stopped being careful." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. If you're still listening, understand this: there is a difference between revenge and refusal. One is about punishment. The other is about survival. When they crossed that line, they chose which one I would need. Elena was the one who brought it to me, sliding a thin folder across the table like it wasn't about to change the shape of everything. "Your father guaranteed a loan," she said. Personally, I didn't touch the folder. "How much? $780,000. The number sat between us. Not catastrophic on its own. Catastrophic when attached to the wrong person, the wrong timing, the wrong assumptions. "What's the project?" I asked. "A townhouse development in Aurora, Illinois," she said. "He partnered with a small development firm. It's been bleeding quietly for months." And Natalie Elena glanced down at her notes. High income, high expenses, credit cards near their limits, a second mortgage she's struggling to keep current. I nodded once. None of it surprised me. Image had always mattered more to them than margin. A week later, I was on a call with Marcus Hale, a managing partner at a real estate investment firm I'd worked with before. We spoke about distressed assets, about timing, about how often pride delayed necessary exits. "There's one project we're circling," he said. "Townhomes outside Chicago. Risky structure, personal guarantees involved." I kept my voice neutral. "What's the ask? Quiet capital," he said. "Someone patient, someone who doesn't need to be seen." I smiled. "Send me the details." When the documents arrived, my father's company name was there in clean print. Unremarkable, like it didn't carry a lifetime of judgment behind it. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt alignment. I called Mark that night. They're not as secure as they think, I said. He hesitated. Are you sure you want to know all this? I'm sure I want to stop being surprised. I said. Over the next weeks, I stayed invisible. I didn't attend family events. I didn't correct rumors. I didn't respond when Natalie texted, suddenly polite, suddenly curious. Instead, I reviewed contracts. I asked questions. I positioned myself where decisions happened without my name attached. Marcus called again. If the project defaults, we'll acquire it through the fund. You'd have controlling interest. And no direct contact, I asked. None, he said. It would look like a standard recovery. That's what I want. I said. Standard. After the call, I sat with the weight of it. Not the power, the inevitability. They had built their lives on the belief that I would always be smaller, always be available to absorb the consequences they avoided. That belief was about to cost them. I didn't celebrate. I didn't rush. I let the timeline unfold the way it was already headed. The loan terms were clear. The grace period was short. The margin for error was gone. If you're still listening, stay with me. This wasn't the moment where I won. It was the moment where the board finally came into view and they realized too late that they had never been the ones setting the rules. The article went live on a Monday morning. I didn't share it. I didn't comment on it. I read it once, closed the tab, and went into my first meeting of the day. By noon, my phone was vibrating constantly. Colleagues, former clients, people I hadn't heard from in years. Congratulations. One message read, well deserved, said another. Didn't know you'd built something like this. A third added, I let them sit unanswered. The first text from my mother came just after lunch. We saw the feature. We had no idea things were this big. We're proud of you. I stared at the word proud until it lost its shape. Then I set the phone down and didn't pick it up again. That afternoon, Marcus called. It's official, he said. The Aurora project defaulted. I closed my eyes. Next steps were moving in. He said, standard process. No noise. Good, I said. 3 days later, Elena forwarded me the final paperwork. The holding company now controlled the development. My name appeared only where it had to. That evening, Natalie called. Ava, she said, breathless. Mom says you've been busy. I have, I said. I didn't know you were doing this well, she added quickly. We should talk. There's been a lot of misunderstanding. Misunderstanding requires confusion, I said. This was clarity. She laughed, too fast. You don't have to be like this. I didn't start being like this, I said. I stopped pretending. She didn't respond. The invitation to dinner went out the next morning. Neutral location. Downtown Chicago. Framed as a discussion about consulting, restructuring, options. They accepted within the hour. That night, Mark texted. They're nervous. He wrote, They don't know what you know. I typed back. They never asked. I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because something was ending, but because something already had. The truth didn't need my voice anymore. It had found its own way into the room, and it wasn't asking permission to stay. They arrived early. My mother stood when she saw me, arms already open, as if we were picking up a conversation paused rather than a history shattered. My father followed more slowly, posture stiff, eyes scanning the room like he was already calculating exits. Natalie smiled last, polished and careful. Ava, my mother said, holding me a second too long. You look well. So do you, I said, and took my seat. We ordered. Small talk filled the first minutes, brittle and rehearsed. We were surprised by the article, my father said finally. You never mentioned things were going that well. You never asked. I said. Natalie tilted her head. We thought you valued privacy. I value accuracy. I replied. My mother folded her napkin. We want to move forward. As a family. I reached into my bag and placed a slim folder on the table. I didn't slide it toward them. I let it sit between us. "This is about a project in Aurora," I said. "Townhomes. You should recognize the address." My father's hand hesitated before he opened it. His face changed as he read. "Not anger. Recognition." "This isn't possible," he said. "The lender is a holding company," I said. "One that now controls the development." Natalie frowned. "Controls how I met her eyes." "Completely." My mother's voice sharpened. "Are you saying you did this to us?" "No," I said. "I'm saying this happened because of choices you made." My father looked up. "You planned this." I prepared. I said, "There's a difference." Silence pressed in. It wasn't dramatic. It was heavy. "You took our money," my mother said suddenly. "From that old account." You never said anything. I closed the account. I said, "After you took $18,600 without permission." Natalie looked down. "You told people I was unstable." I continued, "You interfered with my work. You decided what I deserved without asking." My father's voice was low. "We're still your parents." "You were," I said, "when you acted like it." The server arrived. No one touched their food. I didn't steal. I said, I didn't lie. I didn't use family as an excuse. I just stopped absorbing the damage. My mother's eyes filled. "You've changed." I nodded. "Yes." We sat there until the weight of it settled. Then I stood, paid the bill, and picked up my bag. "I've arranged for the employees on that project to be retained." I said, "They didn't do anything wrong." My father didn't look up. As I walked out, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother arrived before I reached the door. "We need to talk." I forwarded it to Elena with one line. "No response needed. If you've stayed with me this far, you already know why I'm telling you this. Not to prove anything, not to invite judgment, just to leave a record. Sometimes the most powerful ending isn't forgiveness or revenge. It's choosing not to answer anymore."